Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution. Hello, and welcome back to Then a Moment, the podcast where two lifelong storytellers talk about stories. I'm Pavi Proczko. I'm audiobook narrator, author, etc.
I am Colin Funk, childhood development expert and teaching artist.
And today we're going to be talking about Saw 10. Very topical as we, I know there's 10 of them.
Saw movies.
As we come upon the Halloween season, we thought it was appropriate to do a horror. And what better one to do than Saw? Oh my God. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about our moments of the week.
Okay.
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
I've been playing this video game called Tunic, which a lot of people might be familiar with because it's
He's been playing it like a lot.
Yeah, a lot. It's like across platforms. So if you have access to it, I recommend it because it's, first of all, like very cute. Like the animation is like really, really cute. But it's also super smart. It's one of the most creative games I've played in like the last decade. It's really
you've been playing it so much.
Interesting.
I'm like, what is going on? You haven't played a video game this much in
I haven't
years.
in a while. Yes. And it's really great because it's the moment I want to talk about is like when the story kind of like comes into itself. Because as you play this game, you're like this little fox and you're running around the world. It's very Zelda-esque. So it's like kind of isometric world. And you're going into little dungeons and figuring out how all the puzzles. And it's like a ton of puzzles. But you start by collecting like pages in the game that build your instruction book. And as you build your instruction book, you kind of figure out what you're supposed to do. But the catch is the instruction book is beautiful and it's like, and it has it's illustrated, it has a lot of pictures, but it also has a lot of words that are not in English. And so it's in this magical language that some English is scattered in there, and there's like handwritten notes on it to kind of give you clues about what to do. And as you get further in the game, you collect more of these pages and it fills that out. But there's a moment kind of maybe, I don't know, 5/7 of the way through. It's like not quite at the end, but it's pretty close.
Okay.
Where you get the page that actually lets you translate the language. Oh. And the story suddenly kind of like blows up into, and until then it's all these like moments where like, I don't know what the hell is happening. You like die at some point, you become a ghost and you're going around the world in the night and you have to figure out how to get your body back but you don't know what's really happening. You just know that you've been like fighting this like big fox person, but sometimes there's good big fox people and you don't know what's happening. But then once you get this thing, and I spent hours trying to decipher this language because it gives you like the alphabet and how the grammar works. It gives you a key without any letters. But it just tells you, like it gives you a combo of them. Right. So it just gives you the letters in the symbols, and then it gives you like a combo and points to like a little picture of your character. So you kind of deduce that is fox. So you have to kind of like figure out which of the little symbols are what sounds. And then you have another one that's sword. And so you get like, and then from there, I was just like going through trying to find like bits and pieces of the instruction manual that I would understand. Like you find like the controls. So you can be like, the little joystick that probably says move. So I know I can deduce certain letters that way. Did you try to
do any of that deciphering like beforehand? Did you say,
I tried,
this is probably this,
and I could not figure it out. It's because the way the vowels and the consonants work, I didn't know that that's how it goes. Like certain symbols are specifically vowels and certain symbols are specifically consonants, and the way that they connect to each other to form words, unless I wouldn't have been able to figure it out unless I was told.
Sure.
So it was really, really cool to kind of have like everything in this moment. You get this page and it just the whole world like suddenly makes sense and explodes. Cool. It's really interesting storytelling. Highly recommended. Tunic, get it. I love it.
Cool.
About you?
I'm going to go with old classic, Frasier, which I'm sure we've
talked about it. Oh, yes.
It's probably not the first and definitely not the last time we'll talk about Frasier.
For sure. It's our nighttime show, so it's like always playing like when we're winding down.
Yeah. Currently, our nighttime show.
Currently,
we rotate. It's not just Frasier. But we recently watched an episode kind of later. I don't even know what season we're on. Towards the end.
When's season 11? We're in the last season.
Last season? And Niles and Daphne are already together, and we're just watching them. You know, they do a good job of getting those two together without like jumping the shark. It does.
I was going to say, it's like you'd think it would be, because the whole bit is like the whole show is them never actually getting together. And yet they do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't ruin the show.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell that by the time that it happens, it's like, okay, we got to wrap up now. You know, it does feel like, okay, this is towards the end. We really, now that we've done that, we are just not, it doesn't feel like other shows that really feel like they're stretching for conflict at this point, because they have plenty of other conflicts and things going on, and Niles' neuroses continues even when they're together.
Yeah.
But the moment that I want to talk about is there's a whole episode where they're trying to get pregnant, and Niles, it comes out that Niles has donated his sperm to a sperm bank, and Daphne's like, what? You could have other children already. And Niles is like, well, let me go deal with that. He goes and he finds out at the sperm clinic that they never used his sample because he has low motility. So it's going to be difficult for him to conceive, which is like very sad news. He doesn't want to tell Daphne. He just ends up buying a bunch of gadgets that help him, like he buys a little fan to help cool off his genitals, stupid things like that. And he finally sits down and explains to Daphne, and like we're saying, like one of these, it feels like they're setting up like the newest conflict between them, because, you know, they have to keep, now that they're together, they have to come up with conflicts that involve the two of them, and not just like, will they, won't they?
Right.
Because that's no longer the question.
Right.
And they're setting this up, and it feels like it's a pretty strong conflict. I mean, wanting to conceive and finding that it's difficult to conceive, it's a real life difficult thing that is, you know, very emotional. And I think a lot of people would me who has never tried to conceive or have children, it definitely makes me emotional, just like to think about it, to think that like, I think it's just like an innately human thing that we relate to people. And I think that's like, it's a very sacred thing to be able to have kids. And so when someone's not able to have kids, it feels very like close and personal.
Yeah.
So they're setting up this conflict. It feels very, very strong and very, very deep. And maybe it's a little too deep for what that show usually does, because the way they resolve it is in that same episode, they, he finally sits down, tells Daphne that he found out he had low motility. It's going to be difficult for him to conceive. She's very nice about it. She's like, that's okay. Whatever happens, happens. But I don't see why we can't try in the meantime. You see, I'm ovulating. And she pulls out a little ovulation test. And he's like, ooh, yeah, let's do it. And he grabs the ovulation test, looks at it, and goes, oh, Daphne, this isn't the ovulation test. This is the pregnancy test. She's like, oh, silly me. And they're like, wait a minute. It's positive, which means we're pregnant now.
They were already pregnant during the whole
thing,
shebang.
They're already pregnant. And I thought that surprise was such a good setup. They built up this tension so well for them to relieve our tension in that moment.
Yeah. And
we get to see this like very sweet moment where they, you know, they've shared, they're like trying to come to terms with the fact that they might not be able to conceive, and in an instant get this like surprise and joy.
Yeah.
You know, you can't always manifest low expectations.
Right.
But when it happens, when you're like, I'm setting my we've set our expectations the lowest possible, and something magic. It feels very magical.
Yeah.
There's something really magical about that. And it's just nice. It was a nice moment to watch. And I was like, oh, how moving.
Yeah.
They set up this like beautiful conflict, a lot of tension. They gave us a resolution in that Daphne's not upset. We're going to try. But like, we're fine. Everything's going to be fine. So there's already like okay, it's a little sad. They probably won't be able to conceive. Yeah. This might be an issue. And all of a sudden we get this big surprise, which is like even more exciting because we've like dipped our expectations super low.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant.
That's so nice.
Good stuff.
It's so good. And it's so, a lot of times you'll see like these like non-issue moments where it takes this issue and makes it a non-issue.
Yeah.
And it'll be very cynical. You can see it a lot in like the Seth MacFarlane cartoons where it just kind of like just flips it on its head. Or it's like, well, I did all of that work and now suddenly none of it mattered anyway because a thing blew up or they died or whatever. And this is like
I feel like it's very really popular in like comedy, especially like slapsticky things. Of course. Like obviously
it's just like a really nice way to do it.
But yeah, it works really well in things that are dramatic. Mm-hmm. And I think, we're in the age of things like Game of Thrones where they're just like tension, tension, tension. And then we cut the tension with something even more tense and awful. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
This was already horrible.
The tension's cut by cutting off that storyline.
Oh, you thought that was bad. That's how they resolve it.
Right. It's
not, oh, what a relief. It's like, oh, that thing,
that was nothing
compared to this other thing. You're going to hate it.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, Game of Thrones.
Oh, man. Maybe we'll do an episode about that someday.
I was going to say, we should do an episode about Hereditary because Hereditary does it in a really great way too.
Oh, yeah, it really does.
And I talk about another spooky movie, but we can save that for another time because
it'll be a double feature. We'll see. All right. Great. What a nice moment.
Great. Now,
all right, let's get to it. Not so nice.
Speaking of nice moments.
Yes.
Why don't you give us a little
Saw
synopsis?
10 synopsis. Okay. So first of all, go watch something that recaps all of them because this
go watch something. I mean, yes.
You can also just watch all of them, but this is very complicated and convoluted. But we're just going to talk about 10 for the synopsis, and I'm sure we'll touch on all of the other ones as we talk.
Yes, please only stick to go ahead.
So we have John Kramer is Jigsaw. Ooh, surprise! Spoiler. And he is dying of cancer. He's terminally ill, and it's not going well. He's going to be dead. And we know at this point that he is doing the Jigsaw thing already. We have some indication of that. That he's already like started killing people. Well, not killing people, but putting them in situations where they kill themselves.
We don't know where in the timeline this is when the movie starts because in previous movies, he's already dead.
Right. Yes. He's already been dead for a while. So we know that this is right. Yes. For many movies. So this has to take place somewhere between 1 and 3. And so, or before that, I suppose. But I guess I assumed that he was already doing it.
No, it has to be after 1.
I suppose you're right. Yeah. Okay. So, because he has cancer. And
no, because he has Amanda.
Right, but we don't know Amanda yet at the beginning of the movie. Anyway, point is, he is dying. And he is part of all these like support groups, and he finds out that there's some like magical mystery cure.
There's an alternative cure overseas.
And so he decides to go do
Norway, I think.
Yeah, it's from Norway, but he has to like go to Mexico because the daughter's doing it instead of like the guy that created it. And he goes, and there's this whole operation that's happening, and they put him under, and they apparently do this whole procedure, and he pays a ton of money to do it, and finds out later when he comes back to like thank everybody that it was total hoax and they just stole his money. Well, they made a mistake because it's John Kramer and he's already in the revenge business. So he gets his peon, his number 2 Amanda, who you meet in Saw 1 and is like heavily featured through Saw 3. And they together kidnap all of the people involved and put them into a Jigsaw game. And slowly but surely, they are not able to survive their games and off themselves until the end, when like the big baddie does survive, but is perhaps trapped in this place. And
the woman who pretended to,
yes,
who's running the whole operation.
Yeah. And you see there's all these ups and downs with maybe John didn't anticipate how smart she would be and they got out, but then turns out he just knew the whole time what was going to happen somehow, or that it was like set up in a way that no matter what happens, it was gonna work out because they knew everything.
Yeah, it sounds like he always has like,
he's got like a bunch of contingency plans.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the end, he exacts his revenge, and he and Amanda and some little boy who kicks a kickball thing or a soccer ball walk out the door into the sunlight, and it's Saw 10. It's a very dramatic end.
Oh yes, I forgot.
It's very like 90s movie. It's like very weird. I was like, is this a dream? Like, what is this? Yeah. I was like, what is this? And that's the movie. It's very violent.
Feels like the end of Legally Blonde.
It does feel like the end of Legally Blonde. Yeah. Except then in Legally Blonde, it comes back in.
Does it?
Yeah, because then it ends.
Oh, then it goes to
the graduation.
But it does. It feels like that moment.
Yeah, that moment where she opens the door
and she's faded out in the light.
In the light. That's definitely happens in Saw 10.
I mean, for real, that's not...
It's not an exaggeration. That actually happens. So that's the movie. There's a lot of blood, a lot of tension, and it's grotesque. It's like, that...
it's torture.
It's torture.
Just like all the Saws. They are all... So I feel like Saw is the blueprint for torture.
Yeah.
Like that's where it started. I don't know if it started there.
Yeah, but it felt like it was.
There was plenty of gory.
Because there's like even movies that were like Hostel was kind of like that. But I think it came after. I think you're right. That Saw was like...
Yeah. I mean, there were gory movies. There have been before and there have been after. But I really feel like the term torture porn, because the feature of Saw is not just... It doesn't feel like mindless killing. The violence and the gore is so specific.
Yeah.
And it's so planned out that it is the feature.
Right.
It is not just because there are horror movies that are like, that end up really gory. Like the murderer ends up being pretty gory, but like Saw it's its own very particular brand of torture, because it's not really torture, but it
is.
Yeah, the
sort
whole.
of.
I mean, if you don't know Saw,
so let's talk about the premise.
The Saw franchise as a whole, real quick, because it's
relevant.
Yes, and Saw 10. It's been around for a long time now, which is crazy to me. But the whole premise is that John Kramer, who is Jigsaw, he's dying of cancer, and he decides to use his... Did he start doing this before he had cancer? I don't even know.
No, he starts after, because he...
Yeah, so he starts after
he gets cancer, and then he like is distraught, and he gets into a car accident or tries to kill himself or something in a car accident.
Oh, and then he pulls himself out.
He survives it, and despite being dead, despite having, or like being basically on his deathbed, despite wanting to have killed himself, suddenly has a change of heart and does everything in his power
to live.
Right.
So he has this like epiphany that the way to give people the will to live is to put them through these extreme physical challenges that put their physical body, flesh, blood, organs to the test. And they have to do something extreme to be able to survive, and that will give them the will to live.
Yeah.
So he finds people that are committing some sort of sin. They are
drug addicts or prostitutes or cheats or frauds or any of the above. People taking advantage of other people.
he takes those people, and usually, I say usually because it's not always perfect, but usually designs the test based on their wrongdoing.
Right.
There's some sort of connection, even if it's a little bit poetic.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, that's not fair. Like, you found a clever thing, and maybe that's like, okay, the movie writers were getting clever.
Yeah.
And they were like doing something poetic instead of like picking a challenge, a game, as you would say.
Yes.
I want to play
a game.
Picking something that doesn't exactly match up to their sin. Because some people have to do things and I'm like, there is no way I'd be able to do that. And some things I'm like, well, yeah, I would do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a big feature. I mean, the whole thing, I've always been interested in the Saw movies, and I like horror movies a lot. I like to be scared. I don't love watching a horror movie where I'm not scared at all.
Yeah.
And the Saw movies generally there's not a ton of like jump scares. There's not a ton of like, there's not like I need to close my windows.
It's more like countdown timer scares where it's like, are they going to make it or not? It's like, oh my God, are they going to do it? Are they going to just do it? Just do it. Just do it.
It's more suspense than straight horror. Yeah. And I think, but that's why it's torture porn, because there's not a lot of like boo moments.
Right.
It's a lot of watching horrible things happen to people.
Yeah.
They're connected to machinery and crazy things happen. But I always found them really interesting because they're telling a story and they have to craft a full game, a full test that is gory and based on these people's crimes.
Yeah.
And there's something really interesting about the puzzle and the game and those things that they have to be put through. There's something really interesting about the psychological questions that the movies ask in general. Is it ethical to put people through these tests, especially if it seems like most of the time these people are dying?
Right.
Jigsaw's whole thing is he doesn't kill people.
Right.
If they don't make it out, they have all the tools they need to get out.
Yeah.
But he does not kill them. If they die, it's their fault.
Right. So
that's his whole shtick. So he doesn't fancy himself a killer at all.
Right.
So I always thought, like, especially when I was younger, and I think I definitely have changed my mind since then.
Yeah.
For lots of reasons. And I'll talk about those reasons.
Yeah.
I thought when I was younger that there was a lot of, they had some teeth, that idea. Because of course you can really easily buy into the idea of trading an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
I think it feels correct as a human to be like, he did this thing. He cut off that person's hand. We should cut off his hand.
Right.
It's only fair. That's what feels right to us. And we tend to even look at the justice system, like punishments should
match the crime. Yeah.
We still do that. We still try to do that. Of course, we now have the caveat, nothing cruel or unusual. And there have been weird punishments in the past. But since then, I feel like, especially since going to grad school and learning a lot about trauma response, putting the body through severe trauma like that, it probably gives you a temporary boost and
in like your will to live.
But it's not a permanent thing. It's not like like trauma doesn't fix problems. It definitely causes more problems than it fixes.
Yeah.
You now have to deal with your body doesn't forget it. Your body holds on to trauma.
Yeah. I mean, that
ways.
doesn't even take into account something like having to cut off your own leg, and now you don't have a leg.
You don't have a leg.
So like besides the trauma, you also are missing a limb, which is a thing that happens in Saw 10. One lady needs to cut her own leg off and suck the marrow out and put it in some machine. It's really horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrifying. The things that happen in the movie are
really
horrifying.
obviously terrible, but it's
interesting to look at the story of the movies, and we over the pandemic, I think we decided to just watch.
That was
all the Saw
one of our
movies
pandemic binges.
Because you hadn't really seen.
I hadn't seen all of them. No, I only saw 1 and 2. Those are the only 2 I saw.
I think I had seen up through 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And so we're like, let's start from the beginning, because I remember being really interested, and there was a bunch. I think because was Jigsaw coming out in the pandemic?
Spiral did.
Spiral came out during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that why we watched them?
Yes.
Okay, I was like, I don't remember.
We watched Spiral, yeah, and we were we got to watch all of them.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen after 4 or 5, and I was like, I remember being really interested in them, and I would like to revisit them, because some of the, even though I'm not a big gore person, to be fair, I don't really like watching the gory parts.
Right.
Which is crazy.
He closes his eyes. He closes his eyes when it's like the blood is happening.
It's
but like the story part is much more interesting to see like how that matches up.
And I think like I would say it definitely is gratuitous, but not in like a. It feels. I mean, it's what it is. It's it's advertised. It's not.
And it's very good prop and effects.
That's true.
And makeup. It's like really excellent work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought some of these tricks, some of these tasks they have to do, I'm like, some of them might be dangerous. Like some of them are. I in trying to review all the movies. Yeah. Because there's so many, I'm like, and the stories get convoluted.
Yes. Yeah. When we're trying to like remember.
I'm trying to remember the timeline of these 10 movies that kind of go all over the place, and the timeline gets all kind of fucked up because we start after like the third one, we start hopping around like, what time is happening now? It gets pretty weird. But in watching those things, I came across a video that talked about how there's in one of the movies, the one agent has his head in like a jar of water. Yeah. Like it's supposed to drown him, and he gives himself a tracheotomy. Yeah. And he said they had to do that like 5 or 6 times. Because he would just get uncomfortable. He just got too afraid before it was like, because of course you're having a physical reaction to these things. Right. Which is, I have to suspend disbelief in these things, because some of those things would absolutely be impossible. Yeah. There's no way people have actually the will to do some of the things that they do in these movies. Mm-hmm. Like, no, I think I agree. I would say, so in this movie, part of the challenge, one of the women, and I don't think this was fair for her to she had to cut off her own leg. Yeah. Like we said, and drain the bone marrow out. Yeah. Onto a scale. Onto a scale. Now, there's no way you'd be able to do it past like she got just it's like a barbed wire essentially. Yeah. It was something more specific, but like she sawed with like a barbed wire, and first of all, that's going to take a long time anyway. Sawing through, legs are not small. Right. Yeah. You can't just like cut through it. Like, right. I mean, it would have to be, to do it, it would have to be like one fell swoop, really easy, shink, and you're done. But she has to like rub this thing through. And I'm like, she wouldn't actually be able to do it. She'd pass out in like a minute. Yeah. It would be done. There's no way people are physically able to do that to themselves. Right. You know how hard that is? Your body just stops you from doing it. Right. And if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. Yeah. There's some sort of, that's a biological response. Right. Your body's like, do not hurt yourself. Yeah. Don't do it. I think, though, counterpoint,
part of the question there is when your life is on the line, can you? I mean, it's like that 27 Hours guy where he's like cuts his own arm off.
Doesn't it take him like days?
Yeah. Also, he doesn't feel it, I think, by the time he does it because his arm is just like totally dead by that point. But there is something, it's like a wolf will bite off his own foot when it's stuck in a trap. So it doesn't get, it's like that adage. I don't know if that's actually true, but we should look it up. Would a wolf actually bite its own leg off?
That's a good question. Because I'm not sure.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I feel like that is just like something people say.
Yeah.
Because
that's
that
possible.
is that people don't chew their hands off when their hand is stuck.
Right.
That is not a thing people do.
Yeah. So even with your life on the line, would you be able to cut through your leg in this like really horrible, time-consuming way?
I mean, how long would it take you to get up the guts to do it?
Yeah, well, certainly more than the 3 minutes that they gave her.
They gave her 3 minutes.
And I think that's like an issue that I want to bring up too, because she succeeds in cutting her leg off.
I absolutely had this problem with this movie.
In getting a ton of the marrow on it.
Oh, she almost got it.
She almost got it.
She was like a second away from.
And I was like, she did it. Come on.
I would have turned it off. I would have been
right.
like,
I've been like, nah, you got it. You figured it out. Because she did build up the courage to cut her leg off.
She did the thing.
She did the thing
that would have revitalized her life or whatever.
Yeah.
She showed that she had the will to live.
She did.
She sawed off her leg.
Yeah.
And she was able to stick that little thing into her bone. I don't know how that works.
I don't know how that works either.
I was like, how would you know where your bone was or how to get to the mirror? Like, what if you hit the wrong thing at first?
I know.
I don't know.
I'm suspending disbelief again.
Yes,
you have to suspend the disbelief.
My whole point is that a lot of these things you have to suspend your disbelief just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because for time's sake, I think they just have to they're just increasing the tension, and they give you 3 minutes so that we can essentially watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we don't want to sit there the first movie.
It was the whole movie was just a conversation between like two people.
It was just one game, and it was very simple.
It's very slow. It's a very slow, simple movie.
It doesn't feel it like really ramped up.
Yeah.
After the first one.
Yes. Yeah.
But while watching all of these movies all the way through, one thing that I thought was really interesting is we kept bringing up, like, what did we think of the story versus what did we think of the game?
Right.
Because some of the movies, the games were really good.
Appropriate, yeah.
And the story itself was bad.
Right.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
I would say when we saw Spiral, because that's the most recent one.
Yeah.
Right before Saw 10.
Right.
When we saw that in theaters, I was like, vast improvement on the storytelling.
Yeah, really, really great. Like great kind of whodunit situation.
Very,
very interesting.
I can't even really remember the games.
I remember some of the games, but I remember I remember someone with the hand.
Lifted up.
Yeah, the dad was like, the games weren't great because they were also kind of impossible.
And it wasn't Jigsaw himself.
And it wasn't Jigsaw doing it.
I gave him a little
pass. But it's like it wasn't certainly not. The games were not as interesting or related to kind of the crimes in the same way that like the traditional Jigsaw way.
Well, and then after he dies in the third one, technically, Jigsaw, but he's like, his influence lives on. And the fourth one, spoiler, happens
simultaneously.
The third one, which I honestly thought was brilliant.
That was actually pretty great.
Really, I was like, Saw 4 coming in for the win. Like, that was one of my favorites. Because really cool storytelling and really good games.
Yeah,
I thought in Saw 4. But then when there's like a period where Amanda was rigging some games to not work. Yeah. And then also after Jigsaw dies, somebody takes over, one of the police officers.
Yeah, like Hoffman.
His name is Hoffman, takes over as Jigsaw and is not as good and is like a little bit, he's just like out to kill people in a way that Jigsaw wasn't. So there's a couple movies that really focus on Hoffman. Yeah. Like after 4, really, like 5, 6, 7 are all about
him and
Hoffman and eventually like Jigsaw's wife.
Right.
when he's doing the games, I just was not as interested because they're not designed to rehabilitate in the same way with the same care that John Kramer had put in.
Just basically nobody survives it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting
I think that happens in
element.
most movies, most of the Saw movies, that most of the people that go through the games do not survive.
Yeah. And that would make
the most,
sense.
like 1 or 2 people survive by the end of the movie of the main.
Right. Yeah. Because there's even one of the later movies, there's like a support group with like a bunch of the survivors that we've seen.
I think that's 3D. That's
3D,
7, which is 3D.
Yeah. Yeah.
So confusing.
It's very confusing. I think that's interesting too. And it was something I wanted to
let's talk about that in context of this one.
Yeah.
Because the story versus the game.
Yeah. So we've got the games didn't feel that related to, not always, to what was going on.
I mean, we keep going back to that same, I keep going back to the same game. The woman sawing off her leg.
I don't get it.
Well, it's because she drew his blood and just threw it away.
Okay, so she had to draw her marrow?
Give her bodily fluid. So she picked a bodily fluid that was harder to draw than...
And then actually had to measure it instead of just throwing it away? Okay, so that makes sense. I didn't think of it that way. Okay, sure. So it's still like a little bit obtuse.
But my thing is like, it makes sense. Like I was saying, it's like a little bit... It's poetic. It makes sense, but it doesn't match the level. What's the word I'm looking for? The
intensity.
Mm-hmm. It's not the same.
Right.
They're not at the same frequency.
Right.
Of like she was a part of this
scheme. Yeah.
Absolutely. But she posed as a nurse and pretended to take his blood. Didn't really hurt anyone. Yes, they scammed him out of a lot of money.
Yeah,
sure,
right.
But it's not like
people were already dying. Like that was part of it too. That I was like, it's like they were scamming all these like terminally ill people. Which is terrible, that's horrible and really awful.
I think especially for John Kramer, he's like, well, you just scammed those people out of the money that their families
could have used. Yeah.
Like
sure.
Now their families are left with absolutely nothing.
Right.
There was all those medical bills already, and then they bought these magic beans, lost
everything,
and didn't have anything to leave their families. And I think they do even bring that up.
Yeah, they do
in the movie.
Yeah. So that game is also the first game that we kind of see besides the one in his imagination. There's one like earlier that he like thinks of but doesn't execute.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
I thought that was really interesting with like one of the orderlies. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the indication that he's already working. He's already doing this stuff. Because we see an orderly's gonna like steal things from a patient who's unconscious. And John sees it and then has like this fantasy of having kidnapped him and having him break his fingers before his eyes get sucked out by a vacuum. Ugh. Because he's an orderly vacuuming things. So it's like, we're going to have the vacuum suck your eyes out unless you can break all your fingers. And that's a little bit more appropriate too. It's like your sticky fingers, we're going to break them. If you can break them, then you'll save your eyes.
That's very classic eye for eye.
Yes.
You steal something, you get a finger cut off. That's
that feels the most appropriate from the movie.
That's one of the old, like what civilization had that? That was
Babylon? Was it, or no?
I don't know.
Maybe? I don't remember. You cut your hand off?
I don't know.
If you steal? Yeah, I mean, it's very like Agrabah. It's very Aladdin.
What was that? Because there was a ruler that specifically, that was like, he was known for the eye for eye.
Wow, I mean, isn't that Solomon?
Maybe.
I don't remember. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
That's okay.
Nebuchadnezzar. But the second game was with the anesthesiologist for his operation, right? Mateo or whatever his name is. And so he had to perform.
So we're saying the second after.
The second, right, leg. After leg.
After leg, yes, it was supposed to be
because the leg was
girl.
Right. It was supposed to be, and then they switched over. But it's Amanda. Like I think one of the things too is like the leg was so extreme because they wanted to come out swinging.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was it was really big.
I mean, saw is named after
literally
saw. You have a saw, you're supposed to cut off your foot. That was the whole concept. That was the whole thing, right? That's why saw is named after cutting off body parts,
right?
So if you have to saw off a body part, you're in the saw world. I mean, it's like stick with what you know, I guess.
But then the second one was he's supposed to be the anesthesiologist, and so he has to like take out pieces of his brain matter without anesthesia, which again is the thing. It's like you and me, I don't think you'd be able to do it.
You had to cut through his skull
and then
tweeze out a piece of his brain,
which is so weird because it was another instance of like, but he actually did it. He did the thing, and he was supposed to put the brain in some like little vat of like acid that would dissolve it, and then it would connect.
The enzyme would connect the circuit.
A circuit that then would like shut off the machine he's in. And so I'm just like,
he said enough brain matter.
But I was like,
how much?
Or that he had to do it soon enough where it would be able to like dissolve enough to do it. Just both of them, they did it.
They absolutely did it, and I was like, this is kind of
cruel and mean. Like you didn't do it fast enough. It's like, man, he had to take his brain out. Like, what are you talking about? He did it.
Yeah.
Like, and I know there's like, I think maybe that's part of it. It's like, part of the story is John's kind of, the orthodoxy, like the fundamentalism of his belief. He is like
inflexibility around that dogma that he's created.
He's like really in it. And I think that's really interesting because it's like the assumption too in this world that like, because you're able to survive this thing that you're going to suddenly have this change of heart, or
which
in this case,
know in other movies, other people have had to do it multiple times.
Right. Yeah.
Amanda.
Right. Amanda's had to do it if it keeps getting tested. And ends up failing in the end. And so it's like kind of like that impossible bar. I just think it's interesting because like John Kramer is not that charismatic as a character to be kind of this, what is effectively like a cult leader. Like he's convincing all these people somehow that they, like maybe it's sadomasochistic where it's like they've been put through this horrible ordeal, and then when finally they actually succeed and he nurses them back to health and they suddenly like, are okay with him. It's like very, what's the Stockholm syndrome in that way. But he's just like
I guess I'd buy that again. A little bit of suspending disbelief because so many instances in these traumatic experiences, like you lose all relationship in traumatic events. Trauma doesn't bond you in a healthy way. It just doesn't.
But it can bond you.
When somebody is, yes, it can. When somebody is the perpetrator of this trauma.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if it's done for a positive reason. You know that person put you through that trauma.
Yeah.
There's your body is just going to react to that person.
Yeah.
And there I think some people would have an element of Stockholm syndrome if they felt that rush of adrenaline.
Yeah. And suddenly we're like, oh my God, yes, I do want to live. Good. I do want to live. Wow, yes.
He gave this gift to me. There might be that like rush.
Well, I mean, that was literally what Amanda says, I think.
I mean, like, it's not like I've stubbed my toe and survived, and I wasn't like, hooray, I can't wait to live in it. You know what I mean? Like I've done things and gotten rushes of adrenaline. Like, especially when so many of these people have to have long periods of rehabilitation and probably
or
physical
like permanent,
therapy,
permanent damage. Yeah.
Like healing takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
If you're like bedridden for a few months, you lose all of it again.
Yeah.
There's no way that you would just keep it forever.
Yeah.
Not in every instance. I'm sure that there are instances, and I guess my choice is to believe that John Kramer's his motivation, because he felt it, and that was like an anomaly. That is not that common, but he thinks it is.
Yeah, he thinks he's trying to recreate it.
that's now his
worldview. Yeah.
And so he uses that. It's his lens to see the world, and he really truly believes that if people had enough of a will to live, they will get through this and they will change.
Right. Yeah.
And it just, to me, the Saw movies are just, you watch them and you're like, it's not true. You see so many, you clearly see it's not.
And I think that's kind of, that's a little bit of the kind of the lesson here, where it's like you're watching this kind of flawed, unfortunate villain, right?
Yes.
Where it's like your view of the world it's actually not true.
Is he the villain?
Well, that's interesting, right?
It.
Yeah, I want to actually talk about that too, because this is actually very different. This film versus the rest of them.
This film is very interesting. You're right.
Because in all of the other ones, he actually is. He's the villain. We're following an investigator. I wouldn't say in all the
other ones.
Well, in most of them, that he's in, he sometimes has a bigger or smaller role, but usually we're following someone else going through his gauntlet.
Yes.
This one, we're following him.
Yeah, let's talk about the story. I mean, we talked about the games a little bit and how
they work or not, or
they weren't perfect.
Yeah.
There was another game. We don't have to go through exactly what happened. It's fine though. She got lifted up. And
I think a lot of the thing with the game too is like, what exactly was the plan at the end? Like, did you actually plan for them to survive this? She cuts her leg off and then gets the marrow on there. She survives that? Are you sure? And how?
She had the tourniquet.
She had a tourniquet. Great. And then she has to I don't know. What's the end game?
I don't know.
Then
he said they were ready to drive him to the hospital, but was there more than one van? Did they have to wait now for 3 other people to do their thing before they could take them all to the hospital?
That's weird. Yeah. And they're
squarely in the middle of nowhere. What's happening where you are?
Right.
We're probably going to go and check it out.
Yeah. I don't know.
Especially if they have to do it more than once.
Yeah.
What's happening?
What exactly is going on? So I'm not sure what.
That's my question about some of the other ones. Now that I think about it, I didn't think about that before. But clearly, he gets them to hospitals. He gets them to
hospitals, but why?
How?
Right?
Does he put them in an Uber?
Right. It's like, how do we even? How are you going to pass that? And have nobody ask a question about it?
I don't know.
So weird. Anyway, so this story,
very convoluted.
It's very convoluted.
But this movie, I would say, story-wise,
it was pretty solid.
Clear. They really, really simplified it.
They did.
We didn't get to the.
We didn't get the gore,
game.
really, right? Until it's
Saw 1
past
starts
halfway.
as the game. Saw 1 is the game,
right?
With story in the background.
Yes.
And as they go, some of them are like, are we watching a game or are we watching a story? Now we're kind of half doing both, and they're both kind of like, meh.
Right. One was probably the best in that regard of
Saw was like a mystery.
We don't actually know what's happening. They're trapped in a room.
Good twist.
It's a really interesting twist. And then once you have that twist, any other twist is kind of like, nah. It doesn't really work anymore. After maybe there were some that actually worked, where it's 4 into 3, where it's oh my God, it's happening at the same time. That's a huge twist.
I honestly, in Jigsaw, I thought the twist was good. I was very confused by the whole movie until the end.
Yeah, where it's it was happening 10 years earlier or something.
You're
yeah.
What
is happening? Oh my God, it was happening a long time ago, because you find out it's wait, John Kramer's still alive? No, he's not. This crime happened a long time ago, and there's
also at the same thing.
Yeah,
the same thing is happening later.
Right. There's a
simultaneous in the future, in the past.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So there's a lot of interesting twists.
And the last twist in 3D, where it turns out the very first Dr. Lawrence.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a good
from
twist
number
too.
1 is Cary Elwes. Famously played the Doctor.
And he pops up every now and then.
And he pops up at the end of.
They do a really good job of keeping people.
Yeah.
But in this one, anyway.
Yeah.
So is there any big twists? Speaking of that,
it's at the end when it's the only twist is kind of.
Oh yes.
Just when you find out that he kind of knew everything or had a contingency, but yeah.
Start from the beginning. We keep getting distracted. So we start, and it's not a game. We're really focusing on this experience of him going through cancer and feeling like his life is
it's falling apart. It's like all the 6 problems, right? The 6 problems of your main character. You've got like, he's dying. He hates his support group. He had to make this will and testament. He's just all around not doing so well. And then is given this opportunity, right? He like gets this kind of like, one of the people from the support group is like, oh my God, I was cured. Look at my scar. And, I have some secret information. It's like, it's off of the grid, and you have to like go somewhere to do it, and it's not legal, but it's going to heal you. And so there's like a very classic call to action. It's very, he is the hero of this. We're following him as a protagonist in this movie.
This very, very clear.
Which is not the case, I think, in any other
you're right.
Saw movie.
We
see a lot of his story.
Right, we do. They flesh it out a lot in other films.
But he is the villain. He is the villain in the other ones. He's an antagonist, and we're watching police get caught up. We're watching victims. Yeah. In this one, we're actually seeing...
I still think there's a couple that's unclear if we're supposed to think he's the villain.
Well, I guess I'm thinking more like antagonist versus like villain, because as you say, there's the moral question about like, well, he actually is hoping people survive. He wants them to.
And after we get through like 2 and 3, I guess then he's not really in them. But like...
No, but even his like influence is where like at the end he's... was planning to get, the Amanda fails her test. Even Hoffman fails his test. Like his influence is still, cleaning up the monsters that we see.
But it's so interesting because a lot of I think in every other, I guess you're right. Every other Saw movie, we are watching police try to stop him.
Yeah.
This is the only one we're not following any cops. Trying to follow him.
Right. This is not a police story. All the other ones are. In the first one, it's Danny Glover. I forgot about that.
I did forget that he was in that
That's crazy.
That was, after watching the recap, I was like, I forgot about that whole storyline.
Yeah, me too. Because the only thing you think of is like them in that like weird bathroom in some basement.
Yeah. And then it was like very slow. And we're watching 2 people kind of decide whether or not they're going to kill each other. Because that's what they're like, one person has to kill the other. That's the game.
Right.
Right? That's the game.
Yeah, that's pretty much the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Saw your
leg. So in this one, you've got John Kramer, classic hero in that he's given kind of this opportunity and he goes to take it. And then it turns out there's like a big twist. Right. Mm-hmm. So we actually have kind of like our, I guess depends on what framework you've got, but like our kind of catalyst of the story is like, hey, go get this operation. And he goes to do it. And then we get to the midpoint. We actually have like our inciting incident or maybe this is like a turning point where it's like you were lied to. Actually, it's a different game here. And now he's gonna go get revenge. And I think that's something that's really interesting about this story too, because we kind of
he says very specifically, it's not revenge.
It's not revenge. Yeah. Because we kind of have 2 different stories here happening sort of in that way, where it's like we're actually watching this hero get his revenge or succeed in doing the thing that he wants to do, but that doesn't start until like halfway.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it's him getting put into this situation, but it's like we needed all of this at the like front loading to see him need to go do this thing. It's like usually we would see it would be much shorter, that like beginning part.
Right. I mean, I honestly think they gave him that fantasy where they had him imagine what he would do to the hospital employee, the janitor. I think they gave that to us toward the beginning, so we weren't like, we're at a Saw movie.
I know,
because like every other Saw, like I feel like they almost all of them start with like a mini game. They feel like Saw 3D was just like, it started and it was like, here's a public one.
I know. They're going to cut each other up with these table saws.
They're connected and one of them has to cut into the other person.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I think one versus like a PvP game are always my least favorite.
I agree in the Saw world because one of them has to die. I don't know. I'm unconvinced.
They can't they both have the will to live? What if they both do?
Right. One obviously has more because he won.
Or if they both have the same amount, then neither of them end up killing each other because they're pushing so hard against each other.
Right.
That neither of them kill each other, so they both have to die.
Yeah, that's stupid.
That's dumb.
Yeah, that's dumb.
I don't like it.
Another tangent, but like we're getting in number 1 too. Like I had a big problem with like Amanda's game at the very beginning where it's like, oh yeah, there's this Jigsaw killer that we've been hearing about and he does this thing. And you see Amanda for the first time in that reverse bear trap on her head and she has to like cut open this corpse that's lying there and then to get the key. But turns out that person is still alive and just like anesthetized. We're going to cut all that.
No, keep it.
And my question is like, okay, so she was deserving of getting a chance to take her mask off, but the guy on the floor wasn't? Like, what was that game? What was that guy's game?
Yeah.
That guy was just there to die. That's weird.
That problem too.
Like, did they have a game? I thought you said you don't kill people. It's very so. I don't always buy that. It wasn't.
Well,
it doesn't always.
He made Amanda kill him.
Oh, that's right. He did. But like, what's that person's game? You just have to like
I don't know.
lie here.
That I don't know.
You have to wake up in time.
Well,
I just don't know.
Okay,
no.
we can talk about it
anyway. Yeah, I think at the beginning of Saw 10, they give you a little bit of this like violent moment so that you actually feel like you're at a Saw movie. And it also serves to give the limitations of John's extreme morality. Because in the end, the orderly declines to steal. He sees John watching him, declines to steal all the stuff, puts it all back and leaves. And John says, that was a good choice.
Yep.
It was a good decision that you didn't do that. I'm glad you didn't do it because now he doesn't have to do the thing.
Right.
And so we see it's like, oh, it's not actually just a mindless, killing spree, revenge thing. There is a very clear moral directive here.
I think
like
it has to be people that are beyond fixing in normal means.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't think he normally would go after a petty hospital thief who might be he would have looked into that person and maybe they're from an immigrant family that are really straight. He has a family, a full family, like many generations at home. He's trying to support. And so on top of his janitorial job's not paying him enough to support as much as he needs. So he's like stealing little bits and ends here. I don't think Jigsaw would have
done something about it.
Him.
Right. Especially we'd probably find out that the person in the bed that he's stealing from was actually like a stockbroker that caused the 2008 collapse or, something.
Jigsaw knows everything
Apparently
about
he can know everything about it. He has the best research team
really
or something. I don't even know. They find everything out.
I think in one of the movies they make a comment. They're like, well, no one pays attention if you're just like an old man. You can just watch anything and people will just ignore you.
Yeah.
I think they even make a joke sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I just was there and I just watched. No one pays attention to an old dying man.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you know? I was just there. Or like being able to get into places that you're not really supposed to, or look at things you're not supposed to see.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so they don't come out swinging with like the little mini game because usually it's like a little thing. We watch a game happen that is not connected to the rest of it.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is.
Yeah.
But they're just like to whet your appetite essentially before getting into. There's usually more than one story happening at the same time, and that's another difference of this one too.
Yeah.
There wasn't
There
more than one
wasn't.
story.
It was just one story here.
Because those people directly affected him.
Right.
And while a lot of people do directly affect him, like he had the insurance guy that wouldn't cover his medical expenses.
Well, a lot of the people, it was like a lot of like
Dr.
personal
Gordon
beef.
And the X-ray guy who switched the X-rays.
Yeah.
But he found out that one was like kind of an accident. So
it was an accident, so he ended up not actually letting that guy die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. Lots of
very weird.
It's interesting. I mean, they do some interesting things in the stories. Some and the way they do weave the story and keep everything clear, I do think is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I cannot imagine. There's so many moving pieces, and like watching it, I'm like, it's convoluted, but honestly, they keep kind of good track, and it all kind of.
Well, that begs the question: if did they pre-plan it? Like we talked about,
some of it.
We talked about Adventure Time, and Fiona and Cake, and how they like just leave little threads open for you to kind of like tie up later. Avenues, I don't know if that's what they did here. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't think they had anything planned after one. I think one was supposed to be a standalone.
Wow. And then I don't know. And it would make sense. It was,
I think one is
but they just kept like adding on to it little by little and just allowing things to.
Yeah. They had to have planned 3 and 4 together because, I mean, that was they had to. I'm sure with the success of 1 and 2, I'm sure that they got 2 deals at once. Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure we can confirm that. Somebody confirm. Comment.
Tell us in the comments. So yeah, the storytelling is
interesting.
Different in
it
this
is different. I guess it's kind of like Spiral. It was just one story too, really, in the end. Following Chris Rock, which was also a weird thing. Yeah. But it's like that's also one story, but it's also not. It's explicitly not a Jigsaw story. Right. That is Spiral, and it's someone who's just like Jigsaw inspired doing things, and we're watching basically kind of like a very. It's like Seven, kind of like horror police investigation, like a murder mystery. This one,
I mean, it feels like the cop side of the other ones, because a lot of them were usually following a cop investigating while we're watching the game happening at the same time.
Right.
And is the cop gonna get to the game before the person dies? Is he going to save him? Never. They never get there before.
Yeah. No.
That's never ever happened. Unless it was meant to.
Right. Because it was a test.
Unless it was their test. And a lot of the cops are getting tested too. Because there's a lot of
crooked cops, et cetera.
A lot of corruption in the police force generally. Right. So a lot of doctors, a lot of people in the medical world.
Man,
a lot of people
like a really horrible town that he lives in. This place. It's like a lot of terrible people.
That was interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That like he's like, I'm gonna bring the show on the road. That he had Amanda come join him.
Yeah.
And then we found out later that Hoffman is also helping him.
Yeah, Hoffman's also been helping him. Yeah. In like the
plant back at home who was like, oh my gosh, I did it too, and it was amazing.
Yeah, he was faking it because he was a plant. Yeah, that's interesting too. Because well, maybe we'll talk about that later. But the
story. So I think both. Maybe that's part of it. Because I didn't think about it when we watched Spiral, but we're only following one story, so it's a lot less of like. There's like it loses that element of like. What's happening here, and how is it connected to this?
Yeah, we don't have that mystery.
A connection,
yeah,
and we're like, or we think there's. Usually, it's like we think there's not, but there is.
Yeah,
that's usually how it goes. I feel like a lot of the Saw movies are like
the mystery is even more obtuse because at least in those movies where it's like there's 2 simultaneous storylines that. It doesn't seem like they're related, but they must be because they're showing me both of them at once. So because of movie rules, they have to be related or else you've not done your job as a movie maker.
Right.
In this case, the mysteries in Spiral and in this one, they're hidden deeper into the story.
Right. They're less. It's less it's less of a mystery and more of like there's mysterious elements to this story.
Right.
It's not a mystery story.
It's more of will they succeed?
Because every story has things that are unknown and things that we learn later and that come together. But that doesn't mean every story is a mystery.
Right.
And I would take this out of the mystery category. We're not doing that.
Yeah, we're not doing
we're not
it.
confused.
Yeah, I agree.
Like there is that like switch. We find out that they're
like they get trapped into their own, like John gets trapped into his own machine. Like he's in his own Jigsaw trap.
Yeah.
Jigsaw came and you think that maybe John's going to like die in his own game, but turns out that was part of the plan the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and that's right. But I don't know if that's
not quite a mystery. It's a little bit of a twist, but it's more of a, he succeeds. He actually like succeeds in the end.
Yeah. And if you've seen any other Saw movie by this point, there's no surprise in that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I was never worried that this wasn't supposed to work out.
Right.
Because I in fact did exactly what they do at the end. And they were like, wait a minute, there was only you, but there's 2 spots
Yeah,
here.
there were 2 spots left, but there's only 1 victim left. And it's like, well, what happened? Well, they obviously knew. This guy comes back after he was at the plant. He was the second plant that had just gone through an operation. And he came back pretending to be looking for his money. Turns out he's part of the whole deal too. But of course they knew that. They knew that because they had captured someone before who spilled the beans.
Like there's no way, like they like put his gun in a cabinet.
Right.
And,
oh yeah, sure. They left the bullets in it.
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely not. They're not that stupid.
Right.
They've done this before.
Yeah.
I've seen them have these. It happens almost every movie where someone's like, "Aha, I beat you," and they're like, you just failed my test.
Yeah, this was actually your test, and you failed.
Which means you're gonna die.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna do this. The success would have been if you'd done this other thing, and I actually probably would have died if you had done the thing that you were supposed to do.
Yeah, there's been a couple that I'm like, would you have died if the person passed their test?
Yeah.
Jigsaw, would you have died?
Yeah, probably. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So there's also,
but one of the things that I thought that was interesting is that they gave, like you said, John is very clearly the hero.
yeah,
And the villain playing the game is like black and white evil.
she's awful, just awful.
Like sociopath.
Yeah, where in comparison, like just very terrible.
Like John at least has a moral code.
Yeah,
He wants people to survive.
right.
She
could
is
care
killing
less.
people for fun. I mean, she literally
Ends up
wants
killing.
to kill a child for fun.
Yeah, yeah.
She is like, you know what? I want to come in here and like, there's that kid that you care about.
I don't have any moral compunctions, so let's kill him and have you watch him die.
What a horrible villain.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. So the storytelling is very interesting because they give us just a very clear storyline.
Yeah.
We're watching John have this experience.
Mm-hmm.
They give us this, all this hope. And the whole time I'm watching and I'm like,
Yeah, I know it's not going to work
that's a
out though.
scam.
Yeah.
It's got to be a scam.
It has to be, right.
It's got to be a scam. Like, it's like watching your older relatives like fall for email chains. But with like enough like, okay, but we're watching it from his perspective. And we kind of like, you're like, I know there's no, unless this world is a different world that has a different set of
Or it's
rules.
like something that just happened to not work. Maybe for him, because it's like we obviously know that he's gonna die later because we've seen that happen,
Yeah,
and we know he is dying of cancer, so they can't possibly heal him.
Yeah,
unless we're, as you say, in a different timeline. But they're not going to succeed. So that's either the story or it's just not a thing to begin with.
Right. So it gives us like a sense of hope, because I think it's just human nature to be like, well, I kind of hope he survives.
Yeah.
I kind of hope he's healed.
Right. Well, what happens to Jigsaw if he's not dying?
Yeah,
That could have been interesting too.
Maybe we're seeing alternate timeline. Maybe we're now gonna go off and who knows what.
Right.
All the while being pretty sure that it was a scam from the beginning.
Yeah.
Based on the story, but also based on just sensibilities.
Yeah.
And knowing that that's not how it works, and that people use things like, oh, Big Pharma's after me, that's why we have to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to make it seem credible.
Right.
And conspiracy theories are so easy to fall into. It really is, because you want to believe it.
Yeah.
You, especially in this case where it's like, this is a miracle cure.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to work.
Right.
And, there was a plant, and
he
was supposed to have been dead by that point.
Right.
And he was alive and kicking and talking about it, and did the whole, I don't know if I should tell you. I guess I will.
Right.
I'm like, it's so like Scam 101.
Yeah. But it's a very clear story. It's that one
it is a clear story. And
storyline.
we're watching it, and it's like a very clear build, and we watch it happen. It's interesting, and then the switch happens, and then we go right into the Jigsaw game, which is very interesting because now it's used like in a very classical story structure way.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't feel like the other ones where we're like, I don't know what's happening or what order of things or what.
Yeah.
It's all just like horrible, scary, tense, horror movie. Things are just like happening random. It doesn't feel like a horror movie as much. We're watching this kind of like this hero versus villain thing.
Mm-hmm.
We are on John's side, like fully.
I was going to ask, did you want him to succeed? Like, do you want it to work out? Either like they die or they like.
I don't want them to foil his plot, right?
Yeah, you're like totally on Team John for this one.
Yeah, I absolutely am, and I am for like I'm never. I think maybe after the first one, I'm not really anti-John.
Yeah,
because I know I'm interested in watching the tests play out. I'm interested in watching those characters go through the struggles and see what they learn from them. I think that is the thing that makes Saw interesting to me.
Yeah,
is to watch that, because even the police that are investigating, they end up getting caught up in things.
Right.
So they end up getting to be parts of these games and end up going through their own trials, and they're all overcoming something.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting. So I always want to see them I don't want the game to break down. I want to see what happens.
Okay. It's interesting because I think in this one
what do you feel?
I was feeling like there's the two stories happening, like I mentioned, where it like feels almost like there's like one inciting incident, then we kind of like have either a turning point or kind of like the quest is different now.
Yeah.
And at this point, now he suddenly kind of like takes the traditional position of the villain, where he's like put all these people in this game. And I did find myself having a moment, even knowing that it was a scam, but seeing like, well, the lady doctor, like she seems very nice. She wants her people to survive. She seems to be like rooting them on, saying like, you have to do it. If you want to survive, you have to do this. That I end up being like, gosh, I don't know if I want it to happen. I'm like, I want them to succeed, not necessarily John to succeed.
Oh, I want them to succeed. I want them to get out.
Yeah, I want them to get out, and I end up, I guess maybe I like viscerally, I'm just like, I don't care for your methods, John.
Sure. I mean, that's part of
I'm
the
like,
whole
I know
thing.
that she's awful, but I don't want to see what that game's going to be. I don't want to see it,
Well, even Amanda was like, does she even deserve a game?
Yeah.
Does she deserve any sort of rehabilitation?
Right.
I mean, if she's mentally ill like that,
yeah,
this is not going to work.
That's not going to work on her. Right. Yeah.
That's not how that works.
Right. Yeah. I did find myself being like suddenly switching sides once the turn happens and then going back.
Are you feeling like this is more of a villain origin story rather than a full hero story.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not really an origin, but it's like
but
kind of like
in the genre.
in that world. Yeah,
where we're watching it like because
we're watching someone kind of like
he gets to a point where he's like he starts like sketching out some other plan for something else. He's like, no, I'm too happy.
I don't need
healing.
this.
I'm in a park and I can just enjoy life.
Right.
And that gives us a
hint of like
very villain origin story to me. This is see where it all goes wrong.
Right. This is who John could have been. We get glimpses of who he could have been had it all been true.
Yeah.
And
I don't know,
it is a little bit in that realm of origin story for me, where we're seeing a fall from grace. And
yeah, we got to be like, no, don't do it. Like, you didn't have to go. Like, but it's also, I don't know. To me, it doesn't feel like it was set up. Like, it doesn't feel like it's set up that we're like, oh my gosh, we're not setting him up to have given it up.
Right.
Like, that's not what we're setting up. Like, oh, healing him
he has more work to do.
We'll give him, like, have him give it up. And that's not what it feels like.
Yeah.
There is that moment of hope that they give us, which I think makes the flip a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
I understand why they did it, but I do feel like it feels like a straight up, like, he feels almost more justified in this one than in any other one.
Yeah.
At least with that woman, because she's
just horrible.
And it was terrible.
Yeah. Oddly, she survives at the end, presumably.
You know, we forgot about the cab driver's test.
The cab driver, yeah. What was his test?
It was separate from
Oh
that.
my God, he had to take the bombs off his arms.
And he survives.
He does survive.
Ooh, he has to cut them out.
Oh, it's horrible. He does survive though. So that's interesting.
I thought that was interesting because I expected him to come back as maybe
someone, like one of the helpers.
I thought he might have been the pig mask guy at that point. I didn't expect him to have called in Amanda from
the same.
States. I really had assumed he did that one first and separate so he could recruit him.
He could have a helper down there.
But he probably has to heal. So that was probably smart of him to.
Yeah.
Smart storytelling, like
right.
To not have him be injured.
And it was just his source of information.
Yes, he used him as a source of information, and but I wouldn't be surprised if they used that later. You know what I mean? Like that Saw, I guess, does some of the things that Adventure Time does, leaving those little
bits and pieces. Because like
they're like, oh, we don't know. Like there's so many times where we're like, well, we thought they were left for dead, but being left for dead doesn't mean we saw them die.
Right, exactly. And they do that a lot. So in this one, the villain survives. And so who knows if there's a Saw 11, she might be around because she doesn't die. Or we get
technically Hoffman, we didn't see die.
We didn't? No, I guess we didn't.
No, they closed him in the...
They closed him in the van or something?
No, in the room, in the original Saw room.
Oh, in the original Saw room. Oh my God, I forgot. Yeah, and he throws the saw away.
So he can't get himself out.
Yeah, that's true. So they all might still be kicking.
Yeah, they leave him
But
open.
they leave a lot of these, they leave a lot of the mystery open so you can drop back in.
Yeah, if you want to.
Right where you left off. And then...
But then they really, really, I think because they bring in that child at the end, which feels very different to that changed.
It juxtaposes his morals with hers. It firmly plants him in the context of this movie. It firmly plants him as the hero.
Yes, I think that is what I was saying because there has not been another movie. There was the teenager in the second one who was there.
Yeah, but he was
He was, well, we don't know until the end, but he was always safe. And it was
he was never intended to die. So,
right. Which I thought was weird because they put him in this very dangerous situation.
Very dangerous, yeah.
Where there are these criminals that some of them just were killing other people to try to get the antidote. But
yeah, and I think there are instances.
Used kids as
bait.
And we have your kid, you had to do this
to
your kid won't die. I'm not going to kill your child, but you have to get your kid by doing this.
Right.
This is the first time that I was like, you're not going to put a child in this test. I'm not going to watch a child have anything bad happen to him. I refuse. Like, it was the first time I was like, this is absolutely, absolutely abhorrent. I was like, this might be too far.
Yeah. And John would never. And John Kramer would never do that.
But I mean the movies makers. To have I'm like, I don't know if I can get on board with a kid. No, absolutely. I was really like, I don't know if this can happen. If he has to do anything that is, I'm like, I can't watch it. I can't watch that child. I'm not into it.
Yeah.
I was like, and they did put him in the test, and he did have to, like, they covered him in blood, and it was essentially like
there's just beta waterboarding, but like with blood. Yeah. So that was the only gross part about it. Like, cause again, like, I think they were smart about that, where it's like, we actually can't do anything that kind of grotesque to a child and retain our audience. So instead, people can stomach waterboarding, I guess, because they're just kids in water, I guess.
Well,
we just really make it blood, and it's gonna just look icky, right? It's gonna look bloody, even though it's not.
They didn't have him get waterboarded for very long,
right? Yeah.
So they were really like,
and they made him a hero. They made him.
Yes, and it
was so very sweet, because he, like, the one thing that John Kramer learns in Spanish is the word pull, which was very weird. We'll talk about that. But it's like the word pull, and so it's like, don't pull, because there's these levers that they have to pull back and forth on this, like, seesaw thing that determines who's going to get waterboarded. It's either going to be the kid or it's going to be John. And so if John pulls it, he's getting waterboarded. If the kid pulls it, the kid's getting waterboarded. So John tells him not to pull, but the kid does anyway. And so it's like this really heroic, like, nice, warm, fuzzy feeling you get, because the kid's
John's able to, like, overpower him. Thank goodness, because I was like, nothing's going to happen to this kid.
Right.
And that's fine. When the test was, like, not that bad, I was like, okay, I get it. This was already planned anyway for him to, like, well, especially when he said don't pull, I was like, okay, there is a way out.
Yeah.
He's built that in.
Yeah.
And he knows that.
Yeah.
So I felt okay, but I was like when she brought that kid in, I was like,
I was just convinced, because we see, like, the kid on, like, surveillance. I was totally ready for her to just, like, walk out there and shoot him.
I thought
that's just what was going to happen. She was just going to walk out there and shoot him.
Yeah.
Turns out the gun had blanks, so it wouldn't have worked anyway. And imagine if she had tried to do that and found that out. Man, that would have screwed everything up.
Yeah, maybe.
And that, I think, begs,
well, they can get out of their little things. Like, they weren't locked really at any point.
Right. I think that, like, begs kind of generally a question for me, just with John Kramer. It's just like, how do you know people are going to, like, behave that way? And I know that's, as we've discussed, it's like the suspension of disbelief, where you just have to, like, know that some people are, in this world, people can cut their leg off and still do the thing, or there are ways to get all this information, or you can have 3 months to live and somehow managed this entire, like, I don't know, never sleep, I guess, because you just, like, spend every waking moment organizing these things and kidnapping people and planning this out and finding all this information and new machines,
enormous warehouses filled with
machinery, and somehow he's able to do it all while dying. And the thing that really gets me more than any of the other things is, how could you possibly know that she wouldn't just go out there and try to shoot the kid and then realize that it's blank guns and come back and it all is, like, horrible?
He didn't expect that kid to be around at all.
Yeah. Right.
That was a surprise.
Right.
That he's like, this was unexpected.
He intended it to be Amanda to be on the other side there.
Well, I think that's what he expected, him and Amanda. Yes, yeah. I believe that's what he expected. Yeah. He did not believe that kid was going to be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
I think that was actually unexpected.
Yeah.
He did not
there's just like those behavior, just some behavior things where it's like, how do you kind of know?
Set him up as a hero versus a villain.
Yeah.
It became very much, again, it was like very good versus evil story.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to watch, like, to and actually watch a true villain, because like everyone else is essentially like, it feels very like
It's very
ethically ambiguous.
It's ambiguous. All the rest are ambiguous.
And it's interesting that she's like set up at the beginning. She seems very, I mean, she's a scam artist. She's very nice, and she gives him so much hope.
I mean, even after she's caught, she's like, I just wanted to help. I just wanted to help. Let me call my father. He's the real deal.
She's on
And she's on the whole time until she gets out, until she is freed. Then she flips to Maleficent, you know?
Yes. But you see a little, I mean, she also cuts open a person and takes out their intestines to use as a rope.
That's true. It's
think
a
there were
clue.
glimpses.
There's a clue.
Well,
But I mean,
and
the
just
person
the
was
way
dead already and beheaded. So it's like, you know, can't be that.
But the callousness.
It was very
like,
callous.
That's like the little bits of like, look, this person doesn't have any empathy.
Yeah.
Like there's no
Like,
it's not sacred. It's
yeah,
not
the sacredness, the sanctity. Yeah. No sense of sanctity.
No sanctity there. Without it, like, doesn't hesitate.
Yeah. Interesting.
Which is, like, I understand in that situation, some people would be like, there's no use in being, like, in taking your time. I just got to do it. I got to pretend. I got to put on a brave face and just do it, because it's slow. Like, we don't have time. I got to just do it. Like, that's,
I'm going to throw up about this later, but right now I just have to do it.
Yeah, I get that. I do.
But that's not what they showed. She's just like,
They
I have a rope now.
But even like when everyone else was having their tests,
Yeah.
the way she was like,
Oh my God, just do it. Just do it already.
Do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. You're going to die. Just do it.
Yeah.
Like not like an ounce of empathy. Not like, I know this is hard. I know it's hard. You just got to do it. Let's do it. Come on.
Yeah.
She's like, do it. Suck it up.
Yeah.
You got to live. And I think because she believed that her survival was tied to their survival.
To their survival, yeah.
And she's smart enough to like know that that is a possibility.
Yeah. Interesting. Especially because we find out later that she knew that that was John Kramer. And so and that John Kramer was Jigsaw, I guess.
Yeah.
That was something a little confusing.
She's like, I should have known.
Yeah.
And I don't remember
know
the
why.
context of that, but
and we find out, I think it ends up being pretty clear by the end of the movie that we are between 1 and 2.
I think it's 2 and 3. Only because Hoffman's a part of it.
I see. It's possible, though, that Hoffman's already involved between 1 and 2. We just haven't seen his story yet. We haven't, because he is recruited way before 3.
Is he?
Yeah. He gets recruited because his sister dies or something, and then he's like mimicking the Jigsaw killer. Yeah. So it just has to be kind of after the Jigsaw killer has been killing people, which has been happening a lot.
Could have been
before the events of 1.
You're right. It could have been between 1 and 2.
So he's already been recruited as my. It's because Amanda wasn't involved in stuff alone. Like she's in this one, she's like very reticent to do some things. She wants to like save the other drug addict.
And her hair's short. And
her hair's short. And
her hair's long.
Yes.
I don't know if that's...
So I think, and she's like much older now, the actress, because it's been, 15 years or whatever.
Right.
So, maybe it's in 20 years. I have no idea, actually. When was Saw? I have to look that up. I'm going to look it up.
Oh my God.
I've got to look. 4? What? 04? Oh, Colton, I have to tell you that when we came in, speaking of Saw, so when we came in, our producers were not here and the door was just left open and we walked in and all the lights were on and we're like, let's get comfortable. And Colin's like, is this our Saw game? Are we about to get sawed
into this room?
So we were like,
because like all of
I'm not going to sit down until he comes in.
All these big warehouse buildings, and I'm like, this is kind of like a big warehouse building.
Yeah.
We walked past the service elevator was open. It's never open.
It's never open. I'm like, what's going on?
I'm like, this is a little creepy. We just were
the lights are all off.
Then we walked in here and it was completely empty. I was like,
hello.
Okay. Too many things.
Anyway. So that's
we got in spirit.
We got in the spirit of it. Yeah, for really put us in the mood. Anyway,
So
I did
overall,
yeah, 2004. So it's almost 20 years.
Just about 20 years.
God, that is wild.
That's wild. We're old.
We're old people. So, I've lost my train of thought. So,
So they're between 1 and 2.
they were between 1 and 2. I don't remember where I was going with that. But I do want to ask you, do you like it?
The movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I liked this one.
Yeah.
Yes. The Saw movies are complicated. Again, I'm generally, I like them. I like watching them and seeing how they play out and seeing the games.
Yeah.
A lot of them I wouldn't watch again.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd watch any of them. I'd watch some of them
I
again.
might watch one again.
I'd watch one.
I might watch through 4 again.
I'd watch 5.
Right. Well, 5 had the best game.
Yes. We can talk about that in a second. I would say the games in this one were not my favorite.
Yeah. But it wasn't really about the games. It's kind of how it felt too.
Right, which is not my favorite Saw.
I know that's the problem with the Saw movies, right?
I think we talked about this with Spiral too when we had seen it, where the movie was very good.
It's a good movie.
And
it's not a good Saw movie.
Yes, it wasn't a great Saw movie. I think this was better. This one was a better Saw movie.
Well, he's actually in it, so
he's in it.
That certainly helps.
And the games were interesting, and the twist was nice. The twist, that the game wasn't the game. The game, wasn't until they get trapped in the room together.
Right. She didn't know where her game was. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a common, you don't know what your game is until, if you just listen to him and do what he says, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's
always the rules.
That's always the rules.
Yeah.
And if every time people have thought they have tricked him, they haven't.
They haven't, yeah.
The only person I think to have gotten out of both of the cops, I think both happened in 5.
Mm-hmm.
No, the other one in 6.
Yeah.
The first one was the tracheotomy.
The tracheotomy. He gets out, but then he gets caught later.
That was unplanned. He did not think he would be able to, he did not take that into account.
Right.
He could stab himself in the neck.
Right.
And then Hoffman later, he puts the bear trap in the window frame,
right? Yeah,
which stops it from fully ripping off his jaw.
Right. It just does it a little bit.
Yeah. Ugh.
Horrible.
But he survives.
Yeah,
is the point. But those weren't even done by Jigsaw himself.
Right. Right.
Nobody, everybody else who thought they had thwarted his game have just found themselves in the real test.
Well, no one's as good as Jigsaw. No one can do Jigsaw as well as Jigsaw.
Yeah. That's why he decided that he didn't want a protege to keep running it.
Yeah.
Jill was supposed to kill Hoffman.
Right.
That was the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no one can do it. He killed Amanda and he got...
It turns out I'm the only one and that's it. And I'm dead. So it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? Did you like it?
I think I liked it. I think I liked the story more. And I thought that was I think it's really interesting
that's the thing, is I would say I liked the movie because I thought the story was an interesting story.
Yeah. Even though kind of knowing where it was going to go, just seeing the ups and downs of it. And I think it's interesting seeing him as a protagonist and kind of where...
We see his flaws. We see him as a flawed...
We see him as...
He falls for a scam.
We see him fall for a scam, and we see him surprised a second time with the kid, where it's these unexpected things.
Yes,
we actually
see
we see his the imperfection, and I think that's really interesting. I think it's also interesting seeing a story where, we have after kind of the midpoint, the relationship is great.
It feels hey, this story isn't about those guys.
Right.
This story is about...
It's kind of whether whether this ideology pans out more than...
Well, and he's really hopeful that Amanda can take over for him too.
Right.
It's a lot of things. But it does it gets it encompasses a lot of things without complicating a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting because it's, as I said, the beginning of the movie is kind of like one thing. And then at the midpoint, we start having this, he has essentially succeeded in trapping all of the people. And so then when we're talking about like, well, when we're watching kind of this second half of the movie and whether he is succeeding at his game, whether he's succeeding at achieving his goal, what that goal is the interesting thing. Because at the beginning, we have a very clear, like on the surface, we want to see him. He's like, I want to heal. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to not be dead. In the second half, that's not even an option anymore. It's a different thing now. And so it's a realization of like, can I actually bring like my legacy into fruition? And that involves me surviving, it involves Amanda surviving, and involves not that boy dying.
Because he had, again, bought these magic beans and lost. I mean, when you only have 3 months to live, a couple weeks is a ton of time that he's just lost in getting himself up to speed. So not only is he not going to be healed, but he's wasted the time that he could be getting these people up to speed. So this is an opportunity that he has to take because he's lost all that time.
Right.
He has to do it.
Yeah.
And he has to get Amanda up to speed.
Mm-hmm. So it's...
And one good test for Amanda, or one of the victims is a drug addict, and we want to make sure that she can handle it emotionally.
Right.
And that she doesn't give that person special treatment. Right. Which she does.
Yeah, she does.
It's but like, it was always clear that she was not cut out to...
Yeah, it was always clear. Yeah. And so I think it was just an interesting way to kind of present those objects of desire for a character that weren't so concrete. It ended up starting more concrete, I want to survive, and then ended up being much more kind of, I don't know, status based. It was much more ethereal. Like, what exactly does he want? It's not even necessarily to survive. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily to even kill these people or to have them not kill themselves or whatever, like to go through with the game. But what that represents was kind of like what he ended up going for in the end, like really aiming for that very big picture beyond the surface thing. So in the end, yeah, I think I did like it. Yeah. We've been talking about this for some time.
Yes.
A lot to talk about. It's interesting. It's we're
going to talk about just Saw 10, and you can't talk about it.
No,
out of
you
context.
can't. You really can't.
And I forgot. I didn't realize until I watched the recap that they counted Jigsaw and Spiral
yes.
in the numbered ones.
I didn't either. And thank God, because I was like, I've lost a few in my memory. There's just like been memory holes. I have no idea what happened in those. If those aren't counted, I don't know.
But let's do superlatives.
Yeah, let's do them.
Try to stick to
10.
Great.
So
Oscar moment.
Okay. Oscar moment. I mean, why don't you go first? I feel like I always go first. I just want you to go first.
Okay.
You go first.
Jeez. I'm like, I don't know if I have one yet. I was going to take that time to not listen to you and think of my own.
I mean, I can still do that. That's fine. I have one. I just wanted to give you the opportunity in case it was the same. I feel like I always go first.
Maybe, yeah. Look, viewers at home, if you have observed that it's only Pavi going first, I have not noticed. Please let us know. Oscar moment. I'm going to say my Oscar moment is the moment that was like true horror movie, felt the most like a horror movie, was when we go to the woman who's running everything. We go to her house. She hears a sound. She's at her home. She hears a sound.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, let me go investigate. She turns off Did she turn off something? I don't know. She goes to another room and she like goes to her security cameras.
Yeah.
Or she like looks out windows. She doesn't see anything. And she goes to her security camera. She turns it on and it's like very classic. She's watching on the security camera a different angle of her from the outside. And in the picture we see a figure go like walk on the roof.
Yeah.
And she's watching it happen from the side. And like that, I think it's a very effective horror trope is to like,
I'm watching myself and I'm seeing, oh my God, there must be someone above me right now. Yeah.
There's something really eerie about
Very
that.
scary. Mm-hmm.
Like,
it's like seeing it's like a picture taken of you and then not realizing someone was like right there. It's like, oh
that's
my
so
God,
scary.
someone was there. Yeah. Horrible.
Yes. Very scary.
Yeah.
But I thought that was very, very well done because it was like, I know that they're like kidnapping, collecting her. I've seen all this like they do it for everyone. But it was scary. It was like, that was, scary. I think the most tense I was in the movie.
Yeah. Nice.
The most that felt like a horror movie.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to give it to the effects. I think that especially in particular, the bone marrow, just like what
is that what bone marrow looks like? I don't even know.
I think it does. When it's not cooked, I guess. It was so gross, but it was just like the leg coming off and then just like the bone marrow getting like sucked out of the bone. We're going to have a special disclaimer on this episode.
Yeah, let's do that.
To say that this is really gross. Beware. It's really gross.
We talk about explicit content. This is
we're a little late for that, but we'll make something earlier. Okay. So
yeah, we'll just we'll add it to something.
Because it like sucks the bone marrow out to like get on this scale. But what it is, it's like a mesh. So it's like, it's bloody. And so the blood like goes through and just like the bone marrow stays. And it just was like goopy, like yogurt. It was just like piling up and it's just like, bleh. It's so gross.
I wonder if that's something that they use. Cause I'm like, to think about, they're putting it on a scale, but they're like, but also blood would come out. So how are we separating the blood from the marrow?
Just has to be fine enough.
Yeah, it was just like a mesh.
Because the marrow is not mixed in with the blood, so it's just like once
separate.
The blood falls out, it would just be marrow.
Right.
And it's so gross. Oh my God, it was so gross.
Pretty gross.
But that was like,
because the blood couldn't count for the weight.
Right.
It had to be the marrow.
It had to be the marrow. But that was like, that was good effects right there. That I was like, bleh, 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 bleh. Really, really awful. And how fun would it be to be like that actor, to be like sawing through your leg and have to pretend you're sawing through your leg, and it's like some like fake
I honestly think that
cake.
horror movie acting is
it must be just the most fun.
For sure.
It's gotta be so fun.
I mean, I thought about this, when I was in acting school, and like, I was always like, when do I get to do stuff that is like so extreme emotions? And that's what horror movies are.
Yeah.
You get to do all of the extreme emotions.
Yeah.
And not every acting job you get to do that.
Right.
I'm like, but isn't that what real acting is? I want to be as angry as I can be, and as sad as I can be,
right.
and as scared as I can be.
The only time you can do that is in a horror movie. It's in a horror movie.
Like consistently, specifically.
Yeah.
So I want to say that there are some excellent performances in horror films that people like, that there's like never any horror movies or actors from horror movies nominated for Oscars. And I think that is a shame. Yeah,
unless they're like very serious kind of like, they're not slasher flicks. You're not going to have Halloween be up for an Oscar. And Jamie Lee Curtis is killing it,
Jamie Lee Curtis
she's really great, as we know, because she's won a bunch of stuff now.
But she's now won her Oscar.
Yeah, she's won her Oscar. But it's not for a horror movie. It's like we had Silence of the Lambs, which isn't even really that much of a horror movie. It's horrifying, but it's a police drama. And Sixth Sense is also more of an emotional kind of ghost story drama, less than a horror movie.
They're both emotional thrillers more than they are like...
So it's like when you have like a real horror, it's like that person is like really going for it. Like that's
was
good
Florence
performance.
Pugh nominated for Midsommar?
No, but she should have been.
Florence Pugh had one of the best acting performances I've ever seen. Just like her talking on a phone, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's...
You don't even hear the other side of the conversation. It's amazing.
Anyway,
okay. So that's my Oscar moment. What about
unearned moment? I had one a second ago. I feel like I usually go first for unearned.
Okay. So for unearned, it's for me, it's the pull thing with the kid.
I see.
Where it's like he builds this relationship with this child like the night before he's going to go in under the knife, presumably.
And he fixes
this kid's bike who's like hammering, and he's like, so he does, and it's this really like, how do you say pull? And I'm like, well, that's the word? I don't know. It was like so weird that would be the thing that he's trying to get the kid to learn or to learn about. Like, it's not like the kid asked him even like, what are you doing? You know, it's like, no, you don't want to hammer your wheel to fix your bike. You want to pull it so you can straighten it. But there was it was not prompted at all. It was just pull. And it was very obvious that it was just so that later on it was set up so he could be like, don't pull.
That we're like, oh, he learned the word pull. Yeah. Because that's the only interaction they had.
I know. And I was like, all you had to do to fix that, all you had to do was just to have the kid ask in broken English, or
how do I fix it? Whatever.
How do I fix it? Or what are you doing
in Spanish?
And him kind of like deduce it.
Yeah.
That's it. Just have the kid ask. That's all you needed to do.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's your fix, Saw 10. Just have the kid ask. That's it.
I feel like my unearned moment, and tell me if you disagree, is when the guy shows up and is like, I need my money, give me my money. Mm-hmm. And there was not a lot of conversation with him for him to know to go that deep into that.
Yeah. Like, why is he pretending to be the guy coming back?
Like, obviously that was smart.
Yeah. Right. And the only thing I can think of is, if you ever come back here within these dates, you have to pretend to be like, you have to act that part. But I think you're right, especially if the only phone call you got, the only phone call he gets on that cell phone, which is older than baseball, is, we've been kidnapped, and that's all he hears. Why would we're here? Why would he assume?
Like, he doesn't know it's John Kramer till he gets there.
Right.
Like, she doesn't say it.
Right.
And he's surprised, and of course he could be pretending that he's surprised by it, but I don't think he knows. He doesn't know that he's been kidnapped and they're in
this game or whatever. He does get knocked out when he's like looking through the thing. So, he wakes up and he's like tied up
before and is like, I want my money.
Right.
First.
Like, why would he be going in looking for the money so loudly if all he knows is that his one compatriot is kidnapped, his lover also. That's all he knows. So why would he go in screaming too? Like, why not just go in quietly? It didn't track either. I think I agree with you.
Yeah. Again, it could have just been like, he doesn't know what's going on and he's like being careful. And then when he's woken up, he has to like scramble.
Right. He has to play the part. That would probably have fixed it, where it's like he comes in and they just see on the things that someone's coming in. He doesn't have to be screaming about anything. Yeah. They just catch him, and then he wakes up, realizes who's there, and has to recover and play the part. That would have...
Yeah, easy.
That would have been an easy fix. That would have made so much more sense.
The phone
if he's
conversation
going
is
in
too quick for him to like be on his top acting game. I know they're like very good, like high quality scam artists that are like method acting.
Yeah. But there's like no world where he would come in screaming about anything. Even if he was the guy being like, give me my money back, he would have gone in and maybe tried to steal it, just snuck in. Like, he's not going to be announcing where he is. He's going to try to sneak in and get the lay of the land first. So if he's doing that, they see on the surveillance, knock him out, and then he has to wake up and recover. That would have
that's my
made more
moment.
sense. Yeah.
What
about...
What's your favorite game?
In this movie?
In this movie specifically.
My favorite game in this movie...
Do you have one?
I don't think I do. I don't think I liked any of them. Maybe the one that's in his imagination with the theft, the orderly. That's the one that makes the most sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's attached to a vacuum because he's an orderly and cleans stuff, and it's very, noble that you clean, but you're going to clean out your eyes because you have wandering eyes, and in order to prevent that, you have to break your fingers.
Sticky fingers.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. I think that's probably the best game. The one that didn't actually happen.
I agree. But we saw his thought process, and maybe he was rushed, whatever. You can justify a lot of reasons why the games are not as thought through, but I agree. I don't know what the heat gun thing had anything to do with anything.
Well, the heat gun was it was the radiation machine. It's how many times I've been under the radiation. I've been under it so many times. You know what it does to a body. Well, you're going to find out.
What does that have anything to do with her?
She was, I don't know.
No, she was not.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't the radiologist. She was
not.
Yeah, that's too bad. It made sense in the scheme of things, but not for her.
No. And I was like...
And she has to break her hand to get out of it. Because she's
how are you supposed to break it? I didn't like that game at all. So that was my least favorite game, I guess. I was like, I don't... And she technically survives.
She does.
But then what's her face?
Kills her. The villain kills her.
Because she's just a sociopath. That's the whole...
Yeah, because she's a sociopath and just... Oh.
Which, again, for storytelling's sake, makes things very clear and easy.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there are those moments where I'm like, yeah, if I really think about it, I don't think that people would behave like that.
Yeah.
She does the villain we're gonna stay and talk a long time instead of being like, get in those chains, we're getting out of here.
Yeah. Very classic, hubris. Well, the speech in praise, the speech and praise of the villain.
Yeah. Yes.
It's very classic.
Yeah, this movie does feel like a very classic story.
Yeah.
Weirdly.
Yeah, I know. Very weird.
Very weird. So I thought in general, as a movie, it is palatable.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's not bad.
Yeah. Any other superlatives?
Let's expand it out to the rest of them.
Okay. Which one's your favorite game and what's your favorite story separately?
I think the first one's my favorite story.
Okay.
And then my favorite game, I think, has to be 5.
Yeah, we could talk about 5 real quick.
Because it's just
not in
depth, but length, essentially the game is all of the people were intended to work together in each of the games, and if they had, they would very easily have gotten through. But they are working against each other because they think they're in competition, and so one by one per game somebody dies,
which makes each
game
harder by not having every person. If they got to the last game with every person, it'd be really easy.
Yeah, because the last game was they had to give enough blood to get out, but now there's only 2 people to give blood instead of 7 people. And so if it would have been 7 people, it would have been very easy. They would have given a little bit of blood, but now they were basically one of them dies, I think, even.
Yeah, one of them dies, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we see one of them later.
We see one of them in the other movie.
Yeah, in the support group. But so I think that's my favorite game, where it's the lesson, it also matches the crime, where it's they were pitting people against each other in some real estate scheme.
Yes.
And so it's
it was like a slumlord situation.
Yeah, right. And you're all part of this thing, so you need to work. He didn't tell them explicitly, but
he did.
That you need to kind of figure out together how to get out of this.
He did just say explicitly. Wow. He's usually pretty explicit.
They're idiots. Really, you just got to listen to Jigsaw. Just do what he says. Be very obvious. Just follow the rules. Ugh.
Yeah, I thought it was a good game. Not the most interesting story.
That story is stupid, but yeah.
I think my favorite. I think maybe 4, just because it was a lot of interesting thing happens. things happen. And I just remember being so shocked at that one that like the twist that happened was so interesting and it like brought so many pieces together. And I'm like, wow, this is so much more thought through than I thought.
Yeah.
Like they really put a lot of thought in. I thought after it, the story kind of goes off the rails. But I thought 4 was really interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of stories.
And
because they wove in so many pieces together.
Yeah. Endgame.
Endgame?
Favorite game? Was it 5 also?
5, yes. I'm just agreeing with 5 because that was, I think Above and Beyond is like the most interesting set of games. Like the whole thing together was
just made so much sense.
Interesting. Yeah. And every piece of that game and that it was made to be one game.
Yeah.
In a way that nothing else has kind of been like that.
Right.
And I thought it was very good. And it's kind of brushed to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the rest of the movie is not great. I'm sure.
And the rest of the movie is like, it
seems unrelated.
Separate.
Yeah. It actually is.
To the,
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
All done? Anything else? I think I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I think we've done
plenty.
it. Oh, man. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Then a Moment. Like us, follow us, etc., and comment and let us know what you want to hear about. Actually, because we would love to hear from you and tell us what you want us to review. So thanks again. I'm Pavi Proczko, and remember, nobody does Jigsaw like Jigsaw.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Colin Funk, and remember, you can cut off your leg and you still might not pass the test.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Then a Moment, a Pavitas production project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Proczko. This podcast is produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriu, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Proczko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Then a Moment Pod, all one word, for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at thenamomentpod@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.